It's October the 26th, 2021, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I am Gerissar, a PvP Padawan, and I'm not here by myself. It's okay. Andalin is on the road. He's a little stuck, and Big Moran is in between moving, I guess, in between finding a place to stay. But that's okay, because we have Numbing here. You're the number one ranked Arcane Mage, I found, right?
And the current ladder, yeah, you could say that.
All right, there you go. Probably the highest rated player we've ever had on this show, I would say, because what's your current CR, man?
I'm close to 3100 CR, but I've seen some of the people you've had on the show before, and there's some pretty good players. You guys had Nesper on, I think, quite recently, and that guy's got quite the experience. He's a pretty good rogue, so I wouldn't say the highest rated ever that you guys had.
So maybe I'm overselling a little bit, but I'm still super excited to have you on here.
I'm excited too.
Well, hey, instead of me trying to sell you, why don't you sell yourself then? Tell our people about you.
So, hey guys, my name is Numbing. I'm one of the last people that play Arcane, and not one of the many fire mages I'm sure you guys have all run into on the ladder. I've been playing WoW since vanilla, but I've really kind of started getting more serious about PvP starting in Legion and really kind of learning how stuff goes, and I really fell in love with Arcane at that time. A lot of people look to Legion Arcane as being the epitome of Arcane gameplay, and to be honest, I never fell out of love with it since then. So ever since then, I've been getting a bit more competitive as we go, and wow, that's probably about it.
That's awesome. I think that's probably one of the hardest things about WoW is when you fall in love with a spec and then it falls out of graces. It kind of starts to end up being less powerful or into the lower tiers, and everybody kind of pews on it. But I don't think Arcane's quite there yet. Not
I mean, it's not bad in its current state. It's just fire is really, really good, so it definitely gets overshadowed. I think Frost can be said somewhat the same. But yeah, I think really in modern WoW, which people really consider the last 3 expansions, which is Legion, BFA, and our current Shadowlands, they really try to make a bit of more class identity through various ways. They started with the class halls and things, but in reality, they just made it really hard to swap to the other specs, in terms of Azurite or your Covenant, etc. So, I stuck with Arcane because I love it, but also I'm too lazy to grind out the other things.
Truth. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being here, and hopefully I myself will learn something about Arcane that I don't know, which is going to be that's a pretty low reaching bar for me, but that's okay. But hopefully even some of the listeners, and like you said, some of the other former guests, that if they still listen, will also be able to learn something about Arcane Mages. But I guess before we get into that subject of analysis, we always like to talk about what we've been up to for the last 2 weeks since our last show. So I guess I'll start with you, Numbing. What have you been up to these last 2 weeks?
Well, I actually recently started streaming. A lot of people have been wanting to see some Arcane gameplay for a while, and it'd be a whisper I'd get a lot, or I'd be on other people's streams, and then they would continually ask them if the mage streams or whatnot. So I've been doing that. It's been really fun so far to interact with the community, and get followers and just chit chat about Arcane. So I've been having a lot of fun with that.
Nice.
And then just queuing, just queuing a lot.
Oh, sorry.
Having a lot of fun with it.
Where can we find your Twitch stream then? What's it under?
So the Twitch stream is Numbing, but there's 2 N's at the front of it. Someone took my name who doesn't stream. Maybe someday I'll be able to claim that handle. But if you just type in the name Numbing, it should pop up on Twitch.
Numbing with a little stutter at the beginning of it.
A little stutter, exactly, right?
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I'm definitely... Actually, I'm going to go do that right now while we're talking. I guess... My turn. What I've been up to this last 2 weeks, really just kind of slumming around in Shadowlands. Still been working. I decided I was going to try to corner the Selenium ore market on one of the Alliance servers that I have a bunch of mains on, and I got kind of deep into it, not realizing how slowly that was selling. So I'm pretty deep into it, and I'm not willing to let go yet. I started making a little bit of money. People are actually buying it, but it's tough. I tell you, it's been a bit of a struggle.
I
I've
got to
been
give it
spent.
to you for making gold or trying to. I'm one of those guys that is so poor in this game. I have to buy a token so I can pay for my legendaries and repairs and everything else in the
Oh,
game.
ouch, ouch.
So I
So
appreciate the people who know how to make gold in this game.
actually, so I'll be honest. I don't know how to make gold. I don't. What I did do was I started following a bunch of different gold makers and that. This is back in geez, Mop, I think, and got into the trade skill master add on and that. And then somebody had made up a whole like this really cool just download and had all of the transmog, and it had different varying price levels for it, and it all like pre-categorized it for you. And so all I had to do was just upload that in, and I'd do a buy anything that was under 40%, and then I'd repost it. And that's all I've been doing since since basically Mop, and that's worked out fairly good for me. And I'm on like people are vacating the server. It went for it used to be
You're ruining the market for everybody.
well, no, it's just people are just leaving the server because it's a lot of people switched over to Horde. So thankfully the markets are both Horde and Alliance now.
Yep.
If it was just Horde or if it was just Alliance, I'd be dead in the water. But it's on Cenarian Circle, and it's one of the original the Godfather servers. And there used to be a shit ton of there used to be a buttload of money on it, and now like stuff barely moves. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I still make enough money on it, and I'm too lazy to try to restart again on any other server. So
Well, there you go.
yeah, so I've been doing that, and I've also been prepping. I agreed to be the tournament administrator for the next Mascherino tournament, which is going to be this weekend. It's an RBG tournament for it's helping raise money actually for Red Cross.
Oh
So
wow.
I agreed to do that. So I've been busy doing all the prep work for that and answering all the questions and all the other fun stuff you get to do when you're administrating a tournament. So
Hmm.
and also so last night actually we queued up with some people and I completely obliterated all the keybinds on my one tune so I could actually move around and do everything I need to do. Now that's harsh. You don't realize how much keybind like how your fingers are so programmed for key binding until you like redo them all. And I had to shut off like a whole bunch of my add-ons and everything, and now it's like it just doesn't. It seems like a completely different character,
Yeah, the muscle memory really gets like ingrained in the brain,
right?
after years of playing it with it.
Yeah, no,
I,
it's
I swear when I was really young though, World of Warcraft is really what taught me how to type well when I really started playing way back in the day.
oh wow,
Hitting your key bindings correctly and everything else. So
that's awesome. Actually, I never thought about that. I think so. I actually used World of Warcraft to help teach my kids to read.
yeah, I started when I was it's probably like 10 or something like that. And then my mom's like, man, my son just plays this game so much. But then when I looked at like the quests he was reading, like
Mm-hmm.
they're not using small words all the time, like I
Nope.
actually feel like it's helping his reading comprehension, blah blah blah, and I was like, whatever lets you make me play this game a bit more, I'm okay with it. But there's some truth to that, really, though. There's a
Totally.
lot of reading in WoW.
There is all the wait. I just commend you for actually reading the quest text.
Not anymore. That was a vestige of the past. The game reads it to you now. Through the
Exactly.
dialogue
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatever.
Just click OK. Listen to a little bit of talking and follow the golden arrow
Right.
for the
Whatever
Lord.
gets the XP faster.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, let's roll into the need, greed, and pass segment where we'll see what I've come up with this week to tickle everybody's brains.
This likely won't be a clean fight, so keep your distance, eh?
All right. So in this segment, I am going to help pose a scenario with 3 options related to WoW and yourself numbing, and as well listeners at home, listeners live right now. Again, you're always invited to join in and give your choices on which one of these options you're going to need, which one you're going to greed, and which one you're going to pass. So let the hilarity commence while we decide on what we will need, greed, and pass. So this one, I was sitting here today trying to figure out what I was going to do as a subject for today's topic, and a little piece of news rolled across, which I'm kind of spoiling the news ahead of time, but BlizzCon got canceled again for for some reasons, but specifically, I thought I'd do a little conversation about the future of BlizzCon. So after COVID, after the pandemic, right? BlizzCon was canceled. Then they moved it to an online version, which was kind of cool, right? And so now this one, they were talking about kind of doing an online and then maybe some smaller versions or whatever. But now it's canceled again. So I was kind of thinking, what would the future of BlizzCon actually look like? So the question here's the options. We'll see what you think there, Numbing, as well as the listeners. So option number one is just leave it as online only. So no longer in person. It's just going to be online, and with that, Blizzard would develop something to make an inclusive location where everybody could be virtually. Okay. The other option is just go full return. So understand that this is going to be a little bit of a break for now, but in next year and the years following, it would go back to basically the way it was, where all of us nerds all fly down to Anaheim and get ourselves into the Anaheim Convention Center and rock out to whatever music they have as the final set and get to play some games and nerd out with everybody. And the third option is going to be a much reduced, but like multiple in person. So much smaller, not these big multi-thousand number of people all crammed into one convention center, but more local, more regional. And with that, it would also be around the world. So it wouldn't be everybody having to fly to Anaheim, but then allow for the devs and some of the teams to get away from Anaheim and bring the community to other locations around the world. All right. So back to it. What's the future of BlizzCon going to be? Is it going to be online only? Is it going to be back to full return, everybody flying to Anaheim? Or is it going to be a bunch of smaller in-person multiple regions throughout the year? What do you think? Which one would you need? Which one would you agree, and which one would you pass on if you had a choice?
Do I answer or do we wait for chat to answer first?
You can go right ahead.
All right. So, man, I'm personally, I've actually never been to in-person BlizzCon before, but it's been a dream of mine for like so many years. I've had like guild members go to it and whatnot, and like a specific memory I was told about it was this was probably one of the last BlizzCons. If you bought one of their special tickets or something like that, they had a 3D printout of your character. Like in this area, I think it was for Battle for Azeroth, and I thought that was so cool to see like all the participants' characters put out, and I was like, that'd be really cool for me. But on the other hand, a lot of big companies have went to online only presentations. Truth be told, I'm an Apple fanboy. I really love watching their introductions and things, and they're one of the companies that is really well known for their in-person events. Led by Steve Jobs back in the day, but now their online only events, the production value is just through the roof, right? They have crazy transitions, like they get their point across much faster, it flows so much better, and to me it's honestly a bit more exciting than just seeing people continually walk on and off the stage, you know what I'm saying? So I honestly would say I would need the online only, but only if they really up the production values of how they do it and they make it more exciting and inclusive, because I honestly think you can reach more people in an online only event like that. And then people who can't watch it live, it's more exciting for them to watch it later and to see that and be engaged the whole time. So I think if they can pull that off and actually put a lot of effort into it, I think in the long run it actually might be better for the game. But on the other hand, I probably would greed the full return because, there is something about meeting the people that you've been playing this game with for so long and being in person. We always just recognize each other by a voice or, the way their character looks and the class they play. And then when you actually meet them in person and go grab a drink or just like chit chat in person and see your guild, there's something really magical about that. So it would kind of almost break my heart to see it be gone forever in that format. Like I'd really, someday I want to be able to make it, but those BlizzCon tickets used to sell out so fast.
Oh, I know.
You have to be ready to get those suckers like insta.
Yeah.
And I'd probably pass on the reduced smaller in person thing.
Okay.
Maybe because I don't quite understand how that would work out, but It's probably not for me
No worries.
because it
No
seems
worries.
like a weird hybrid. So
That's fine. And that's it's all subjective, right?
right.
Well, personally, I was gonna need on the in person. I like the idea of smaller, allow for people who can't afford or maybe have travel restrictions and can't get can't get to the States, can't get to Anaheim. Allow for something more regional where everybody goes to, I don't know, to Germany, or everybody goes to Britain, or everybody goes to South Korea, or I don't know. Everybody, they have one in Southern California and they have another one in upper state New York or something. I don't know, but that kind of stuff. I like that idea. And if that way, then if anything, it kind of increases the amount of accessibility for people, right? And so that was, I think I'm going to need on that one. Definitely going to agreed on the full BlizzCon though. It's just such an epic feeling. Like you said, meeting up all together, you're amongst a crowd of 30,000 people with your guild mates, with your raid team, with your arena partners, your what, and everybody's there for the same thing. Everybody is all there for the love of the games, right? So it's all you don't feel like you don't belong. You belong there as much as everybody else that you're rubbing shoulders with. So definitely got to agree on that. I'm gonna pass on the online, only because the last even if they up the accessibility, up the production value in that, I as much as it's nice, it's a nice little placebo, but it just doesn't, you don't get the feeling of community like you do in the in-person events, period. I never felt as connected watching the online as I ever did being at a BlizzCon, or you're going to an actual LAN. So,
Yeah.
oh my, I'm losing my voice here already. This is not good. All right. So, just looking quickly at the chat. We got Morty there. Hey, buddy. So he chose regional is his need, online is his greed, and the Anaheim is his pass. Wow. Okay. Yeah. If they could simulcast different regions, that would be pretty cool as well. So, but it's once again, if you missed the live recording and the online, if you missed the live recording and you want to let us know what your thoughts are, by all means head on over to the Warcraft Radio Discord. Links for that's going to be in the show notes down at the bottom, and come into our Technically PvP channel there and let us know what your choices would be. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick look at what's the upcoming WoW PvP events.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
Indeed. Get in there and fight. So, Dalaran Gaming is still hosting his 5v5 1v1 duels. So you got to keep an eye out for that on his Twitter, Dalaran_rogue, or you can subscribe to his YouTube channel where he streams live there and shoutcasts the different duels there. Those are pretty fun, actually. I love watching when he does those. They're an absolute blast. Although, surprise, surprise, there was one team. I think the second player out on the team was the Windwalker Monk, and basically 1v4'd the whole other team. Not a big shocker. Yeah, it was.
I play with the Windwalker, so I believe it, dude.
Yeah, it is what it is. Here's one I found out, which is really awesome. There's the Wild Hunt PvP community is hosting a 2v2 tournament and a Hallow's End transmog contest. So it's alliance only, unfortunately, but it is a solo queue sign up. And what they're going to do is they're going to do a roulette team making. So they'll choose your teammate, and then once you finish the matches, the winners, you split up and you get resorted with another teammate. So every match, there's a possibility you're going to be playing with somebody different. So it sounds really cool. But as far as I understand, I was talking to the organizer earlier. It's alliance only. It's going to be single elimination, best of one. All the matches are going to be on Blackrock Hold Arena, And and you gotta figure it out. Figure out who you're playing with and how you're gonna win.
I'm
So,
an Alliance loyalist, so you had me sold at Alliance only, right?
well, there you go. Well, here, actually, I'm gonna put this into the Twitch chat, but I am gonna have the link in the show notes. So if you head on over there, and you can sign up at their Discord and let them know. So So this is the unfortunate part. Signups close tomorrow, and the actual tournament is happening Thursday evening. So I literally just found out about this today, unfortunately. But I thought I'd talk about it here first, and I'll put something out on the internet later on the Twitters or something like that. So keep an eye out there. Like I said, Matcherino, they're doing an RBG tournament in support of the Red Cross this Saturday, October the 30th. Link for that is also going to be in the show notes. It's got some pretty big names in it. Should be a really fun time. It's going to be 10v10, so big teams, big fun, original maps. The Oasis community is scheduled out a Keystone Builders tournament, so that's the Mythic Pluses, and that's going to be on the 10th through the 12th of December. So keep an eye on their Twitter if you want to get more information on that, or head on over to the Oasis Discord if you want to sign up. And last but not least, for the Blizzard official tournaments, the last one, well, I guess that's not really true because they are doing something different. So we have the MDI Global Finals are going to be this weekend starting on the 29th. So those 8 teams are going to be battling out for the prize pool of $300,000 US. So it should be a really, really good time. And I believe I saw something where they're going to be doing another great push, but I forgot to put it on here. So we'll save that for the next episode. At least we'll have something to talk about. That's all I know or all we know about WoW PvP events. So again, if you're listening and you happen to know something that we missed or want to make sure that we also highlight an event that you know about, please let us know. We'll happily put it in the show notes and talk about it during our segment. But now we get to have our magic eyes opened as we pick Numbing's brain about Arcane Mages.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
Excited to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. This is awesome. So this is the part that I know Andalin hates. I love doing, but I love talking about roles in arena. So there's always the 3 different parts. There's the damage, right? The people that are doing the damage, the people that are doing the heals, and then all the different support things that you can bring as a spec in arena or in PvP. So, I mean, obviously Arcane Mages, you're built to just blow somebody up, right? Just channel that arcane energy and just annihilate somebody.
Overwhelming power.
Itty bitty living space. No, sorry. Oh, wait, that's the wrong franchise. Okay. Anyway, but obviously you're a magic user. You don't heal anybody. I think at best you can heal yourself, right? With some self heals.
Yeah. You definitely have some defensive talents. You really can't help your teammate too much besides casting Polymorph. But one of the very unique and cool abilities that Arcane has is called Mass Invisibility.
Yeah.
And everyone who's near you within 40 yards, which is quite, it's out there, they become invisible for a little bit. Obviously, if they use an offensive ability or if they have a dot on them, they'll come out quite fast. But it detargets them. And in the current meta, one of the biggest uses for it is the Maledict Trinket is back.
Yeah.
And now it's a castable trinket, right? So you have a little bit of a window where you know what's about to happen. And when you cast Mass Invisibility, it just cancels it. So you definitely have that as a utility, which is really fun.
Wow.
And then the other fun aspects of it, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. You can start the game by being invisible with your normal invisibility, and then you can cast Mass Invisibility, and you're able to cast things like Polymorph and to get the healer instant, and they're not able to really stop you from doing that. Unless they somehow predict the mass is coming or they see it's been on another player and then use some sort of ability that they would normally use to stop poly. But it's a really interesting ability.
That's got some really niche gameplay to it.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And for some of the people who've been playing Mage for a while, all the Mage specs used to have an ability called Temporal Shield, where it's all the damage you take over 4 seconds gets restored afterwards. They took that away from all the other Mage specs and they kept it for Arcane. So you're able to heal yourself with that too, which is another PvP talent that's pretty interesting.
All
But other than
right.
that, it's pretty much basic mage gameplay. You do a lot of damage, and you're gonna go polymorph something else.
Now, but to be honest, so this is, I guess, this is one of the downsides for Arcane is unlike Fire and Frost, where technically, oh, especially Fire, where they have two schools of magic.
More than two these days. They
Yeah,
got all the schools.
but Arcane doesn't, right? Like, if you get locked out on
Arcane,
Arcane, you're kind of hooped.
yeah. So that's definitely one of the downsides of Arcane is that your main damage dealing is on the same school as your polymorph ability.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get kicked, you're kind of a potato for a little bit. Now in Shadowlands, they added back, things like Fire Blast for all the mage specs. They
Mm-hmm.
added Frostbolt back for all the mage specs. And then your Covenant specific ability, I think aside from Kyrian, you're able to cast that as well. For example, I play Venthyr, and that's a shadow stuff. So if you
Mm-hmm.
are kicked, you definitely have a bit more spells than you can cast versus say BFA. So you're not quite the potato, but it is one of the downsides. One of the skills early on you learn as Arcane is you gotta fake kicks. You can't get
You got
kicked
to
at the
juke.
bad times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's how you know you're fighting against a really good Arcane Mage if they're juking you really good. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, how about let's go through the talent tree, and you can kind of tell us what works, what doesn't work, and maybe get into kind of like the why, where the nuances are.
Mhm.
So in the first tier here, we got the amplification. So when clearcast, arcane missiles fire 2 additional missiles. Okay, that's always nice. The rule of threes. So when you gain your third arcane charge, the cost of your next arcane blast or arcane missile is reduced by 100%. All right, a free arcane blast or missiles. That's nice. And then arcane familiar, where you summon a familiar that attacks your enemies and increases your maximum mana by 10% for an hour, and that's on a 10-second cooldown. That
Right.
sounds kind of PVE though.
Yeah. So pretty much in this row, you only take amplification all the time.
Okay,
So this was an ability was buffed from BFA. It used to only do one additional missile, and then they were really generous and they made it now fire 2 additional missiles. Um, so it works because not only is it a significant damage boost somewhat, um, there's a legendary that I love playing, and it's your damage legendary called Arcane Harmony. So basically,
mm-hmm.
anytime arcane missiles hits an enemy, the damage of your next arcane barrage is increased by 8% basically, and this stacks up to 10 times. So just being able to clear cast and you get 2 additional stacks, you're able to play into that legendary a bit more. I'm not a big PvEer this patch, but I think in PvE that's the talent they take as well for similar reasons.
Makes sense.
Um, so it's definitely your best. It helps you with your damage when you get clear casting, and it helps feed into your legendary. Now, to rule of threes, this used to be a really good talent to run in BFA.
Okay.
I liked it in PvP as well, but it was also baseline in PvE. But the thing is you usually, especially if you know how to manage your mana, it doesn't matter too much when you hit 4 stacks that you have one cast um, to get a little bit of mana back. And partly this is because they also added a new thing in Shadowlands that every time you use the ability called Arcane Barrage, it gives you mana back now based on the amount of arcane charges you have. So they made it a
Oh.
lot easier to manage your mana as Arcane. It
Mm-hmm.
used to be the skill of Arcane that if you go at a bad time, like you're screwed, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to get back from that. But now they made it that anytime you press that ability, you get a little bit of mana back. So as the PvEers would say, it's a mana positive rotation for the most
Okay.
part now instead of a mana negative. So you really don't run that one anymore. And then Arcane Familiar, I don't think you would ever run this ever. I'm always against having like an NPC play the game for you, but it
Yeah.
doesn't really do any damage, and having a little bit extra mana doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
Back in
So I was gonna wonder.
Legion, yeah,
Hmm.
back in Legion, you used to have this ability called Mark of Luneth, which was the artifact weapon, and
Yeah.
that did more damage based on your maximum mana. So this ability back then might have had a little bit of play to it, possibly, but right now, it's kind of a dead talent. There's no real reason to run it.
That's unfortunate. Uh, I should, well, except for now we got the Legion Time Walking with the Mage Tower. So maybe this will be back after all.
It
Maybe?
could. As far as I understand with the Mage Tower, they're removing everything. Like you're on a
Yeah.
level playing field. No covenants, no
Yeah.
conduits, no
It's all
BFA
banned.
necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it is. It
you're
is.
you're just there in your baseline abilities, which is a good thing because hopefully it's around for a long time.
Well, yeah, it should be because it's supposed to be all time walking. We'll see.
Yep.
But okay. Uh, and there's something else I was going to ask you, but now I can't remember. So, um, for mana in that, how hard is mana management really difficult, or is it like do you still have to kind of Tetris it a bit, or is it like pretty simple and you don't have to worry about going anymore?
So in PvP scenarios, I'd say it's easier than it's been for sure. It's
Okay.
one of the easiest iterations of Arcane to do it, but there's definitely scenarios where you can run out of mana. For example, one of the strengths of Arcane is being able to spam Dispel or Spell Steal, as the ability is for
Yep.
Arcane Mages. Um, if you're playing against a Druid or something and you're doing nothing but dispelling all game, that can burn your mana quite fast.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other issue is to get your mana back, you have this ability that's been around for mages for a long time, but now it's only home to Arcane. It's called Evocation. So when you cast
Oh.
Evocation, it brings
Yeah.
back all your mana over a cast period. So if you end up in a place where you're completely out of mana and you don't protect your Evocation by, going behind your pillar or paying attention to kicks and you don't get that off, you can be at a point where you're still able to cast stuff, but it's hard for you to really cast a lot of damage. So there are scenarios where you sort of become a potato for a little bit, as I like to say. So,
Well, nobody wants to
but
become a potato.
but also just to throw it in Shadowlands, you got this cool ability back called Mana Gem, real throwback to the old classic days. Um, and for the entirety of this expansion, you were not able to use it in arena or battlegrounds or anything of PvP of the sort. I think it was an oversight on their side, a bug per se, but we just got word that 9.15 you'll once again be able to use Mana Gem in arena, or
Huzzah!
finally be able to use it. So that should help out as well with mana management and
That's
you know
awesome.
helping yourself out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because that was always a big thing in Classic, because you always had to make sure you had your mana gem before you started, so you had enough mana to make it through a fight.
Right.
So, oh man. Well, it's awesome they're bringing that back. Let's see what the next row here has and see what else they've brought back. So we got the Master of Time, which reduces the cooldown of your altar time by 30 seconds. And altar time resets the cooldown of Blink when you return back to your original back to your original location. I'm having a hard time talking tonight. Wow. Shimmer. This one's. I think this is like the default, right? So this is a 25-second recharge, 2 charges. It teleports you 20 yards forward unless something is in your way, and it's unaffected by the global cooldown, and you can cast it while casting. And then Slipstream, where clear casting allows arcane missiles to be channeled while moving. Evocation can also be channeled while moving. Ooh, that actually sounds pretty sexy. All
Yeah.
right, tell me which.
So
I'm kind of tied. I'm tied up between these ones. Which one do I?
Yeah,
Which one
so
do we
this is
pick?
one of the most interesting rows. I say it's probably one of the only rows where you could find a scenario to run all three. So I think it's kudos to them for actually making the talent choices somewhat desirable here. Like you said, Shimmer is definitely the baseline. The biggest thing for a mage is being able to land polymorph on a healer and whatnot. So being
Mm,
able to cast that polymorph and then while you're casting it, blink around the corner and get the heal is definitely something that you know it's just a mainstay in Arcane Mage or just general game or Mage gameplay at the moment.
mm-hmm.
I definitely probably run that one maybe like 90% of the time. Um, they gave us a new talent here called Master of Time. This changed an ability. They used to have a mana barrier sort of talent, and the reason it was
Yeah.
never good was is if it was strong, it was completely overpowered. You would never take any damage, and then they would nerf the heck out of it right after beta, and then it would be a dead talent you'd never use anymore because you just would go from
Yeah.
just taking damage. So they replaced it with Master of Time. This is a really, really strong defensive capability because not only do you get your altar time, which is originally a minute CD, it's reduced by 30 seconds. So in general, you have that for almost every diminishing return, which is a really strong, because alter time itself resets after when you press it, it resets your health and position back once you click it again. So it's a very strong ability. And then the other thing people have to realize, and it's because people have been playing Shimmer for so long, Blink itself gets you out of a stun when you're not using Shimmer. Back in the old days, but people are
Okay.
realizing again on Burning Crusade. So when you go Master of Time, not only do you get this super strong reduced CD, you're
Mm-hmm.
able to blink out of stuns. So for me personally, if I'm playing into Rogue Mage in twos, for example, and sometimes even threes for that matter, depending on the comp I play, I run Master of Time. And you become so strong that, because normally people kill you in a stun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only are you able to get out of the stun with your regular blink, as people call it, you have this insanely low CD on alter time. So pretty much when you run that, almost no one goes you anymore, or you're just kind of immune to death, like, especially in a two scenario. It makes it so it's really
Oh
strong,
man.
and I find
Yeah.
myself going between these two a lot. Shimmer most of the time, and then if I want to play defensively, I go Master of Time. So
So
go
I have to
ahead.
ask, Ultra Time, can obviously you can't cast it when you're stunned, but I'm not sure about the spell. Is it instacast or do you have to worry about kicks or something like that?
So alter time is instant.
Okay.
So you're able to click it, and it snapshots your position and your health. And
Okay.
then after 10 seconds, it automatically brings you back to that position and the health. And you can click it again if you want to do it, before 10 seconds is up. The only downside of it is, one, you can dispel it.
Mhm.
And then two, if you're kicked on Arcane, you casted an Arcane spell after that, or, you're in a crowd control, you can't go back. It'll still
Ooh.
go back when the 10 seconds is done, but you can't manually go back. And we all
Okay.
know that damage is extremely high in Shadowlands and PvP.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in a CC you can't get out of, and you can't alter back, like, it can be deadly for sure.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're trying to survive for 10 seconds nowadays,
That's a long time.
that's a long. Ugh.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Next row, you got your Incanter's Flow, where magical energy flows through you while in combat, building up to 20% increased damage and then diminishing down to 4% increased damage, cycling every 10 seconds. That's actually, I have to admit, as gimmicky as that kind of is and kind of hard sometimes, where like the cooldowns don't line up or your buffs aren't lining up. I still think that's really cool how they do that flow thing.
Yeah, for
Then
sure.
you get your focus magic, where increases the target's chance to critically hit with spells by 5% for 30 minutes. And when the target critically hits your intellect, and chance to critically hit with spells is increased by 5% for 10 seconds. Can't be cast on self. Okay. And then Rune of Power. This is where you put the rune on the ground for 12 seconds, and if you stand in it, your spell damage is increased by 40%, or within 8 yards of it, really. So, and Icy Veins will also create a Rune of Power at your location. I guess that's only for Frost, eh? So, okay.
It's for all the specs. So
Oh, it's all,
if I
okay.
can, yeah, if I can break this down, for a lot of expansions past, almost all mages would run Incanter's Flow,
Mm-hmm.
because Rune of Power was hard to get off. You had to cast it, and then you had to stay within, the confines of your Rune of Power to do the damage. So they did a little bit different things in Shadowlands. They kind of nerfed the strength of Incanter's Flow. And then the biggest change they did with Rune of Power is anytime you press your big CD, which for Arcane is Arcane Power, or for Fire it's Combust, and like you said, for Frost it's Icy Veins,
Mm-hmm.
that Rune of Power automatically casts below you instantly.
Oh,
So
nice.
this, and all our big abilities now are off the GCD, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it increased the strength of it incredibly, because now not only do you not have to cast it and telegraph that you're about to be bursting, you just instantly get that 40% bonus. And that's one reason why you see mages were really strong, or especially fire, is because this ability now, like, really increased people's power. Like in the past, you could run a Rune of Power, but the other team could see it and they'll just run away, etc. But now you can just go straight into your damage rotation. So pretty much in
Nice.
this row, no matter what spec you play, almost everybody runs Rune of Power. Almost always.
Interesting.
And Canner's Flow, just, it doesn't give enough strength anymore, and you just rarely see it. It's kind of become a dead talent. And then
Okay.
as far as focus magic goes, I've never run it in PvP. I don't think it's very good, and I don't think I've seen another mage run it as well. I've heard about niche scenarios in PvE with the frost mage where they can run this and it slightly starts pulling ahead of Rune of Power. But this is one where they slowly just added it in to try to make it. But for so many years now, it's always been Incanter's Flow or Rune of Power, and right now it's just baseline Rune of Power almost all the time.
Yeah. I see focus magic be handy if you're casting it on your healer, but because you can't cast it on yourself, right?
Right.
Would you run double mage and cast it on another mage?
You could, but then it's just you're comparing uh getting your intellect and critical strike up by a little bit versus when you put rune on power, you get 40% spell damage.
Yeah.
Like the difference between that of damage is just insane. So abilities like focus magic only kind of like get value when you're just always casting over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And in PvP, that just tends to not be the case too much, where you're just
Yeah.
continually casting. So it's only in these niche PvE scenarios where you're casting enough to get that damage bonus. And while the way Shadowlands is, it's so cooldown heavy. So cooldown
Mm-hmm.
heavy. Your offensive abilities are insane, and within 2 seconds you can kill someone. Even less if you play a Windwalker or something like that, right? So you just don't see it very enough. I think it seems interesting. I like the idea
Yeah.
they were going with it because I think focus magic or something similar to it was another ability back in vanilla or TBC that mages had to put another buff on their teammates or
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So I think they're trying to do a little throwback there.
Yeah. A legacy from that era,
Right.
right up there with Arcane Familiar. All right. Well, how about the next row then? You got your Renaissance. Yeah. No, Resonance. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
resonance.
I'm
Yep.
having the hardest. Oh.
Resonance. I gotta start calling it that. I love it.
So Resonance, period. Oh my gosh. Now I have it stuck in my head. All right.
I
So this
love that
talent,
actually.
you got Arcane Barrage, deals 15% increased damage per target it hits. Your Arcane Echo deals direct damage. Direct damage you deal to enemies affected by the touch of Magi causes an explosion that deals 10% of spell power as arcane damage to 8 nearby enemies. Not so great in maybe RBGs, but not so great in Arena. And then Nether Tempest, where you place a Nether Tempest on the target, which deals 17% of your spell power as arcane damage over 12 seconds, and nearby enemies within 10 yards, limit one target, and deals reduced damage to the secondary targets. Damage increased by 60% per arcane charge. Ooh.
Right.
That,
So this
yeah.
is sort of an interesting row. Almost always you're gonna run resonance.
Mm-hmm.
And like before, this has really good synergy with the damage legendaries you can get for Arcane, because they
Yeah.
all seem to really want to increase the damage of Arcane Barrage, and you can make your Arcane Barrage hit really, really hard. So especially if you're playing against like a BM Hunter or just in general in Arena, if they're stacked up, your Arcane Barrage starts getting a really good damage bonus, and this ends up being a very strong talent in almost everything you do. Arcane Echo is really interesting. So every time you deal damage, it does an explosion. So like clear casting arcane missiles itself hits for 8 times. So just one cast of clear casting that you get 8 hits off, and this does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And as far as sims go, I think this is like your strongest single target ability. But the issue is, and this is one of the reasons why it probably doesn't see much play in Arena, is it breaks crowd control.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I really that's a change I really hope they would change for it, because maybe you can control your magic a bit more than a melee can control their cleave per se. But um, the fact that if you cast this, that it could break, your poly insta, it just loses a lot of value. But it's
Mm-hmm.
it's quite strong damage wise. So like yeah, if you're in an RBG or something, that you could have a lot of fun with this.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do a lot of damage for sure. And it looks really neat too. It just tons of explosions going off. So it's pretty fun. It's a fun ability, but you just don't run it enough in arena.
I,
And then the final, go ahead.
Sorry, I was wondering, like, rip somebody's graphics card with all the graphics, all those explosions. They probably lag them out. Suck.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, what about
Um,
another?
and then Nether Tempest. You really don't run it anymore just because of the strength of resonance. It just tickles them, to be honest. Like it doesn't do enough damage to be meaningful. The only real play it gets and its viability is you have a dot. Arcane Mage does not have a dot. So you can throw it up on a rogue, for example, and it'll keep them in combat, which can help you down the line if you want to get that sort of benefit from it. But just due
Okay.
its lack of damage and the viability of resonance or resonance or whatever how you pronounced it, you just really don't run it. And then the other downside, just the same with Arcane Echo, is if they run that over to your polymorph, it'll cleave onto your polymorph and break it, which is just super sad. So
Yeah.
you just don't see it enough anymore.
Okay. What do you have any need for any dot protection for dispel protection or anything like that? Would that be another reason to run Nether Tempest, or is that not even a consideration?
To be honest, that wouldn't really be a consideration. You don't
Okay.
really, they can't really dispel anything off your target too much.
All
That
right.
they only would get one ability off it. So
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Next one, you got the Chrono Shift. So Arcane Barrage slows enemies by 50% and increases your movement speed by 50% for 5 seconds. Ice Ward, so Frost Nova now has 2 charges. And Ring of Frost, where you summon down the Ring of Frost that everybody is used to seeing in arenas for 10 seconds, and anybody entering it gets incapacitated for 10 seconds. And when it expires, then the enemies are slowed by 65% for 4 seconds. I gotta stop using Wowhead for this. It's not 10. It's not. You're not incapacitated for 10 seconds in a ring though in PvP, are you? That's a reduced.
so hold up, you read Ring of Frost here.
Yeah.
Okay. You are actually when incapacitate expires, that's just their version of saying it's the same DR as polymorph. You're just
Okay.
incapacitated instead of being polymorphed. But yeah, you're correct in what you said. So you do get incapacitated, but it's
Okay.
the same diminishing return as polymorph.
Oh,
But
that
yeah,
sucks.
so as far as this rogue goes, um, Chrono Shift is one of the very unique abilities for Arcane, and a lot of reason why people play it. So
Mm-hmm.
every time you press Arcane Barrage, which is an ability you press a lot if you want, it increases your speed by 50%. And what makes this different is it slows your enemy, but it also speeds you up, and you
Yeah.
can do this every 3 seconds. So you pretty much can get 100% uptime of this if you really wanted it, and that's really one of Arcane's like viability is being able to have more mobility than the other specs and to
Mm-hmm.
really be able to run around and do what you need to. So it's really fun. And I'll be honest too, like when you're out in the world, it's really fun too because you can run around really really fast and get to where you need to a lot faster. So uh, by
All right.
default, pretty much every arcane mage runs Chrono Shift because of that. Your
Mm-hmm.
increased mobility, because especially against melee cleaves, which are
Yeah.
very prominent in today's meta, this can really help you get away, kite them a bit better, whereas the other mage specs, kind of have to just sit there and take the damage. They're not really able to get away.
Okay.
Um, Ice Ward, you don't see it. You just don't see
No,
people run it, just because of how strong the other two are. But yeah, it's just kind of a dead talent. It's not very fun or interesting.
that's
Um,
unfortunate.
yeah, you just really don't see it, and it's also part of the reason why is if you freeze someone, they get a diminishing return on that freeze, and Frost Nova has such a short cooldown anyways that you pretty much have it back up by the time the DR is over anyways. So it's very niche and you probably just don't see it. I've never run it and I've to be honest I've never seen another mage run it. So Ring of
Okay.
Frost is really interesting.
Yep.
This is an ability that uh, almost all the other mages, all the other specs run baseline. If it weren't
Mm-hmm.
for Chrono Shift, I would be running Ring of Frost all the time. The benefit here is not only can you Ring of Frost more than one target, you can CC targets that normally cannot be polymorphed, right?
Yeah.
So a druid, for example, who's in form, you're able to polymorph them,
Mm-hmm.
or you're kicked on arcane, you can still cast Ring of Frost and then be able to put that down. So it's definitely really strong. Personally, as a player, I'm starting to use it a bit more in arena and finding more uses for it and when to use it, etc. But I would say 90% of the time I run Chrono Shift, and if I
Mm-hmm.
run anything else, you can play Ring of Frost because it is very fun.
Yeah.
Um,
It's great.
and
Great for
like I
pets
said,
too, right?
yeah, great for pets.
Ooh.
BM hunters, things like that. So
Does it work on Dwayne?
It does. It works on Dwayne.
All right. Okay.
So definitely a strength there as well.
Nice. Okay. I'm surprised. 10 seconds seems like a really long time for PvP. I would have expected it to be.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, all PvP stuff caps at 8, so
Yeah,
it's definitely
okay.
8 seconds in arena. But yeah,
Still.
you do get the added effect on it that they changed in Shadowlands, I believe, is that when they leave that CC, they're slowed by 65% for 4 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an added benefit from that as well. Even if you only land it for half a second, it gets dispelled or something. So it's pretty
Nice.
interesting.
All right. I should read these more often. It explains why when I trinket out of a ring, I'm moving so slowly. It's like, oh, that's why.
Right.
All right. Next row, we got oh my gosh, words. Reverberate.
There you
go. Yes.
go.
If Arcane Explosion hits at least 3 targets, it has a 50% chance to generate an extra arcane charge. Okay. Arcane Orb launches an orb forward of your position, traveling up to 40 yards, dealing over 100% of your spell power as arcane damage to enemies it passes through. And you also grant 1 arcane charge when cast and every time it deals damage. And then Supernova, it's on a 25-second cooldown, pulses arcane energy around target or ally, dealing 30% of your spell power's arcane damage to all enemies within 8 yards and knocking them upward. A primary enemy target will take 100% increased damage. So
Yep.
that sounds really cool. Again, the all enemies within 8 yards, that just screams no because of CC breaking.
Yeah.
Arcane Orb sounds really fun. I'm
Right.
not. Yeah. Okay. I'll shut
So
up.
this
You
is
tell me.
yeah. So this is a row where it's very divisive for mages here, and they get really angry at the developers for how they did this row here. So basically, reverberate, you just don't use it. It's just not strong enough, and especially in arena, the time where you're actually going to hit 3 targets is kind of low, and on top of that, you only have a 50% chance of getting an arcane charge. You pretty much never run it. So the big story here is Arcane Orb and Supernova. These are the 2 abilities that when you talk about Arcane, almost every Arcane Mage will tell you they want one of these 2 baseline because they're so interesting to the spec and they're so integral to the spec that it's such a hard choice to make between them. And previous expansions, these were on different rows. So you were able to play them both together, and now they put it into one row. So basically, everyone runs Arcane Orb. It's strong damage wise, and per target it hits, it gives you arcane charges, so you can go into your damage, etc. Has a really low cooldown. You pretty much always run this, and this is one of the abilities I've heard through all the years. This should be baseline. This should be baseline. It just it's so good for the rotation and how it works that they want this. Now Supernova is incredibly fun. It is this is the saddest one to be in this row just because Arcane Orb edges out. But Supernova has so many useful things to it because say a warrior charges at you, you can knock them halfway through their charge and it ends their charge. There's a ton of things you can do with Supernova. And back in the days in the corrupted Battle for Azeroth or whatever, the corrupted season, Supernova was just insane against Mage Lock Druid to stop the casts because having just one kick was not enough. So there's so many interesting abilities to do with this. My take on it as well is that it doesn't do enough damage. I know some people are like, well, the only thing unique about it is the knock. That's all that matters. But the damage component of it is just so small that I think if they up the damage of that anyways, it would better compete in this row. Because even in PvE, there's absolutely no reason to take Supernova. But I really think this could be a really interesting ability in Mythic Plus for certain packs, because it's, Mage or Arcane Mage doesn't have Dragon's Breath, which is, Fire's claim to fame. And this is such an interesting ability that I wish they would expand on, make baseline, buff its damage, or put it in another row. Because it was one of the unique things of Arcane is having this ability, Supernova. And it was really strong for people and really good in situations. But just by its row here, you almost always go Arcane Orb, which is really sad. Even Arcane Orb is great as well. It's just you really want both somehow. So
just let me have both.
Right.
All right. So question then, before we get into the next, if you could move Supernova, where would you put it?
I could move Supernova. That's a really hard choice given the current thing.
Right?
I'll be honest. If we had to change nothing, like we don't actually redo the talents, I would change it to where Arcane Echo is at. Because this is clearly an AoE row. Arcane
Yeah.
Orb is generally for AoE. Reverberate is clearly AoE. Arcane Echo looks like that would be better suited there. And then Supernova could go on the thing with Resonance. I think back in the previous expansion, Supernova competed with Resonance as well, if
Okay.
I remember correct. So I think it'd be much better there if you just swap those two.
Right.
But
Makes
to be
sense.
honest, just because the first row is really boring, I'd put it there as well.
Can you
So
imagine having Supernova as like a level 15 though? Like that seems a little.
it'd be fun. It'd be really fun. It looks really cool when you cast it. So,
Whee! All right.
right.
Okay. Last but not least, the last one, we got overpowered. So your arcane power now increases damage by 50% and reduces mana cost by 50%. Time anomaly. At any point, you have a chance to gain arcane power for 8 seconds, gain evocation for 1 second, or gain time warp for 6 seconds. Okay. Enlightened. Arcane damage dealt while above 70% mana is increased by 8%. Mana regen while below 70% is increased by 20%. Okay.
Right. So,
Hmm.
my take on this, just generally, it's really sad, I'd say, to see that your ultimate row is all passives.
Yeah.
There's no active button, which is kind of sad. I know a lot of other classes get active abilities, and it feels much more cool. But then to like dive into one that you actually run, you pretty much only run either enlightened or overpowered. So
Yeah.
overpowered is really strong. It helps your burst window, helps you
Mm-hmm.
do a lot more damage, and then helps you with mana as well. So when you are going into your burst, you can just unload because it reduces the mana cost. One of the downsides of this is it's been nerfed in PvP. It's not as strong as 50%. I forget
Oh.
what the actual number ends up being, but it's not as strong, but it's still better than the damage you would get from Enlightened, for example, when you're in your your arcane power. So this is the one I run almost all the time. I like doing big damage during my burst, especially for how the meta currently is, and you get a lot of value from that. Um, Moving over to the next one, Time Anomaly. This one's really fun, but just this RNG component of it just makes it unreliable because it can be either godly or just terrible. So
Oh.
sometimes in a game of twos, if I'm just against a comp where I'm like, the other team really has to try to lose this game, sort of thing, or something like that, I might run in Time Anomaly just to play the slot machine because you have a chance to proc Arcane Power after Arcane Power after Arcane Power, and then proc Time Warp as well, which you're not able to use in Arena, but this thing can still proc it and you get hella haste, you know. Um, so it's fun, but you almost never run it just because of the RNG component. It's just, yeah, it's just not as good.
That's
And then
unfortunate.
Enlightened, yeah, and then Enlightened is interesting. So if you're above a certain mana percent, you get increased damage all the time, which is
Mm-hmm.
great because it kind of brings back the old days of Arcane where you'd float around a certain mana. Um, this is strong in like an opener, for example, where you're above that mana consistently. But as the game goes on, you don't spend a lot of time above that sort of mana, especially if you're spending your mana by doing damage. So the real strength from this talent comes from the mana regeneration. Um, and games where you feel like you're dispelling a lot or you just want to pump a lot of mana, having that extra 20% mana regen is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely see this is very split, I would say, amongst arcane mages. You see them running both either overpowered or enlightened. I would say almost 50-50, and it comes down to like a preference. Personally, I like overpowered because I'm used to managing my mana and it's not as difficult for me.
Yeah.
But there are games I sometimes run enlightened as well, just because that extra mana regen is just really, really good.
What is the Arcane Mage mana regen like when you're like what's it the MP5 like?
That's an interesting question. I don't know I could answer you. It's not
Okay.
the best
All
because
right.
you get most of your mana back from your evoke or
Yeah.
Throwing barrage. I would actually have to think in terms of MP5. It's funny because specs like Frost and Arcane or Frost and Fire actually have better mana regen because their specs aren't designed to go The only way they go is if they're spamming spell steal, and then they'll get that mana back pretty fast as well because
Yeah.
they want the spec to always be doing damage. And they actually buffed it a little bit ago because last expansion, I think haste got so high that they actually got to the point where those specs could go because they were casting so much.
I
So they
remember
just
that.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was so odd to hear in modern WoW that a mage spec could actually go that wasn't arcane. So that's stayed in the game, and they have really good mana regen. So arcane is like normal.
Wow.
It's almost like a healer in terms of your mana regen, but in terms of the exact number, I couldn't tell you.
Okay, no worries. So it makes me wonder, like, again, talking about mana management and everything, and then this one talent. I guess in the end, though, maybe the answer, instead of buffing the MP5, allowing the mana gem to work is kind of the answer to that anyway. So
Yep.
all right. All right. So of course, with the way they did PvP talents, we can now choose 3 based off of the list. I had to admit, so when I went to Wowhead to look this up, I was like, wow, I thought there's something wrong with the webpage with how few PvP talents there were. But
Yeah, there really isn't too many for
there's
arcane.
no, there's
Some
not.
specs have definitely a bit more, so it's definitely unfair. If the
Mhm.
developers are listening, we could always use more.
Well, more meaningful choices, because there are
Right.
some where it's like there's 18 choices, but like 8 of them are ignored. So it's really a solid
Right.
10 anyways. But okay, so you got Arcane Empowerment, Arcanosphere, Kleptomania, Mass Invisibility, which we already talked about,
Yep.
Master of Escape, Netherwind Armor, Prismatic Cloak, Temporal Shield, and Torment the Weak. So rather than going through and describing a bunch of these, let's first start off. Let's. Are there any that you just don't use? Like they're fluff, or they're red herrings? Is there any
Yeah,
there
so
that you just ignore?
I'd say the ones you almost never use is Prismatic Cloak, Torment the Weak, and then I personally never run Master Escape or Netherwind Armor. I almost never
Okay.
do, but they do have value sometimes. If you want to be ultra defensive, you could run Master Escape or Netherwind Armor if you really need to,
Hmm.
but generally I almost never run them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then that basically leaves your Arcane Empowerment. So clear casting now can stack 2 additional times, and then you increase the damage of your arcane missiles again, which sounds amazing compared to what you're talking about with the DPS legendary and everything else we're talking about
Yep.
for that. Just yeah, okay. Arcanosphere. So this is that. I just thought it was on WoW highlights. I think there was a guy in the sheep, and Buddy like zeroed him with an Arcanosphere.
Yeah, that might have been me.
Actually, it probably was actually. uh, and then
I
you
saw
got
that clip. Someone linked it to me. So
that's awesome. Okay, it was you then. And then you got Kleptomania. So spell steal steals all the spells. So you don't have to spell steal one and another and another. You just do it once and boom.
Yep.
And then mass invisibility, which we talked about. So that's like 4 that you.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, and did we talk about
So
temporal shield?
we did a little bit at the start. So I
Okay,
think
that's right.
one,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. So about 5 that you could really pick from.
Okay.
Um, my take on it, I can just start off the ones I always run. I always run Temporal Shield, Arcanosphere, and Mass Invisibility, almost always. And part of the reason why is I run a damage legendary.
Mhm.
So as people know, there's a really strong defensive legendary that has been the bane of every other player that isn't a mage. That when you cast your barrier spell, it casts all the different specs barrier spell as well. So
Mhm.
you just have really strong defensive capabilities. So if you're not running that, you're definitely more squishy. So to having temporal shield is just another button you can use to protect your health for 4 seconds. Is just
Okay.
really, really good. So I almost run this thing baseline. Um, Moving into Arcanosphere, this is a new ability that was in 9.1, a new honor talent added. It's really, really fun. The coolest thing about it is it goes through all the walls, so you can cast behind a pillar if you want, and then just launch it and it goes 60 yards, which is farther than a lot of spells in this game.
Yeah.
And it can hit an unlimited number of targets. So, in RBGs is extremely fun because you can, be in the center of Eye of the Storm and just, lay waste to everybody. And it
Oh
knocks
my
them back,
gosh.
right, on top of
Yeah.
it. So, and
Wait,
you're able to do go
you
ahead.
could go behind the tower. You could like go behind Belf Tower and cast through the tower
Right,
and hit everybody in the center of the scrum.
right.
Oh
So
my
there's a
god.
lot of fun capabilities you
Sorry.
can do with it. It's kind of a
Yeah.
long cast, 4 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's going on, but it has a cool animation while you do it. You really feel like you're, channeling overwhelming power and whatnot. And then the interesting interaction with it is you can charge it up, and then right after it leaves your hands, you can press arcane power, and as long as that thing doesn't hit anything yet, it'll benefit from your arcane power retroactively. So it's really interesting that you can do that. So if you get it off, then you can press your burst, and that's how you get that crazy one shot. Like the biggest I've hit with it in arena is 60k, which is an entire health bar. So it's definitely fun. It's very lethal, but it also can be hard to get off. You got to be good with it, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be on a pillar. You have to be far away from your enemies, where it's like it's hard for them to get to you, to stop you, etc. But it has a lot of payoff for it. It's a lot of fun to run it. I run it almost all the time. So
That must be so satisfying.
it
To...
really is. When you get it off, it's fun. It's really fun.
Oh man. Okay, that sounds awesome.
Right.
Now, now I wanna. Now I gotta love my mage. Oh man.
There you
Like,
go, dude. You need it for the mage tower, right? Anyways, you gotta level all the classes.
oh
But
yeah. Good point. Crap.
so, and then lastly, mass invisibility, which we talked about. Those three are the ones I basically run all the time.
Mhm.
And to swap these out, you can swap out Kleptomania. Sometimes I'll play Kleptomania against an Ardrid or something like that. I don't run it a lot, to be honest. A lot of people assume
Okay.
I do, but I just don't, because just being able to spell steal enough is enough for me, anyways.
Mhm.
But sometimes I do, especially if you're playing against like RMD, for example, Rogue Mage Druid, and the mage pops combustion and he has a ton of hots on him, right?
Yeah.
Your chances of getting that combustion by pressing spell steal is just so low that he'll have already done all his damage. So being able to get it insta is really fun.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll run that. And then the other one is Arcane Empowerment. So this is really fun and strong, because you can stack Arcane Missiles, which only stacks up to 3 at baseline, up to 5.
Mhm.
And then every stack you have increases its damage by 5%. And the biggest bonus of it, and this is also me on my soapbox here, is when you cast Arcane Explosion, it no longer gets rid of that clear casting proc, which is what makes your arcane missiles do more damage.
Okay.
It's really annoying. It's basically, they added this, I think, for PvE, so you can do more AoE explosions without running out of mana. But
Mhm.
then you use that clear casting proc, so it's like almost, if you don't run it, it's almost impossible to really stack up your arcane your clear casting procs.
Okay.
So it's fun. I run this one instead of temporal shield if I just want to do maximum damage, and I just know that they're going to be running at my teammates or something like that, for
Mhm.
example. Really strong. The only downside is it's really hard to get all up to 5. At baseline, getting a clear casting proc is really, really hard.
Okay.
It just doesn't proc enough. I really think they could buff it if anyone
Huh.
was listening. And the proc doesn't last long enough. I believe it lasts less than 15 seconds. And if you're not getting another proc to refresh that duration, it's just gone. So
Oh.
this could be really strong if they increase the proc rate of clear casting, but at the
Mhm.
moment it's just really bad that it's really hard to get that the fabled 5 stack. But if you do get that 5 stack and you let loose, like, you're a machine gun. You really are. You're hitting a lot of damage really fast. So,
Wow.
but those are pretty much the only other talents I run, though.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. I'm just imagining like what you're talking about, like that fabled unicorn of having the 5 and 5
Hmm.
stack. That's just, yeah. You'd be up there with a BM hunter almost.
Right? Yeah. You'll be a real spec, as I like to joke around.
Ah, that's too funny. Well, okay. So let's delve a little bit into the whole borrowed power stuff then,
All right.
if you got time for that.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
All right. So number one question everybody always asks: Covenant. There's usually like the one covenant rules them all for PvP. Is that the same thing for
Yep.
arcane mages, or is it like is there actually some choices there?
So for the most part, I think Venthyr is the best. But it's not how you say like incredibly better than the others. I actually think Arcane is one of the specs where you could run all of them if you really wanted to and have
Okay.
some success with it. They all bring their little sort of benefit to the game. There really isn't one that's insane over the others. I prefer Venthyr because you have an ability called Mirrors of Torment, which basically puts like a curse on them almost. I don't think it's not considered a curse, but every time they use an ability, it does damage to them, and then it slows their movement speed and their cast speed by 15%, and that stacks. And then the biggest thing you get from it is every time they do that, so this can happen every 6 seconds, and it happens 3 times. You get a clear casting proc, and that's why it's so strong. Is because, like I said earlier, your clear casting procs are so bad to get. They're
hmm
so hard to get. You can almost spend your entire mana and not get a proc, right? So this thing helps you get procs to go into your legendary rotation and just do damage with it. So that ability is just so strong that it almost automatically makes Venthyr the best, in my opinion.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and then the other cool things about it is, like you said, getting kicked as an arcane mage is, it's
It's
a
sad.
recipe to become a potato.
hmm
So you have this ability called familiar predicaments. So the duration of incoming interrupt, snare, or root effects are reduced by 15%. They nerfed this a little bit. I think it used to be 25%, which was pretty strong, but you still get a lot of value at being 15. So you spend less time being a potato, which is just really strong. And then lastly, the other cool thing is you get this ability called Door Shadows. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with.
Yep.
Um, and you're able to use that as a disorient when it
hmm
lands on people if you're using Nadia. And since you don't have Dragon's Breath like Fire does, you're able to slow a healer and then Door Shadows on top of them and go into your poly. Or you can also peel your teammates a bit more. You can door shadows on top of them. If a Windwalker is bringing out his images and doing unhealable damage, you can door shadows on top of him, and not only disorient the Windwalker for 3 seconds, it'll disorient all his pets as well.
Yep.
So it just adds a little bit more of like defensive and offensive capability to Arcane's toolkit, which it sort of needs. So
Yeah. I
definitely the
love it.
best. Briefly on the other covenants. Oh, go
Sure.
ahead if you had a
No,
question.
no, 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 no. Go,
Okay.
go.
So briefly on the other covenants, Kyrian is the true one shot.
Okay.
You can do really, really strong barrages with it. The only downside to it is it's a bit more telegraphed. It's
hmm
a bit easier to see happening. And then the other downside is the Kyrian Spark, which is their coven ability, is on the Arcane Lockout as well. So it just makes it harder to pull off. Though if you
hmm
pull it off, it's extremely strong, extremely strong. I might be playing it a little bit in 915 to swap around for fun. It's definitely the best covenant in PvE for Arcane by a
Yeah.
good mile. Um, yeah, and then what are the other ones here? Night Fae. Night Fae is always decent. It has good mobility on it, and having cooldown reduction with this main spell is always good.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not a fan of it, but it definitely can work, especially if you're off-specking fire, because it's the best for fire. And then there's Necrolord. Um, at the moment, obviously everyone knows Fleshcraft is incredibly strong. You can
Yep.
play you can play Necrolord, I swear, in any spec in this game in Arena and do well just because Fleshcraft is so strong. Its offensive capabilities aren't quite there. You get to turn in this really cool looking skeletal mage, and it increases the damage of your arcane blast and increases your
hmm
spell damage, which is pretty cool. But it just seems a bit lackluster in the damage department. So I I don't think it's the best, but you definitely can use it because of his defensive capabilities, and also in 915 they're buffing the damage or buffing the length you get to stay as a skeletal mage.
Oh,
So we could start seeing it played a bit more across all the specs, to be honest,
okay.
for mage. So
Doesn't that make you susceptible though to things like control undead?
that's a good question. See, I haven't played it, but I
Okay.
wonder if it actually makes you turn undead. Because if it does, that's also another downside to it. And the other downside is I think it adds a cleave component
hmm
to when you cast Arcane Blast. So I'm not 100% sure, but you know, President would say it probably does, is that it can break polymorph as well when you're casting Arcane Blast.
Yeah.
So that alone kind of just ruins it. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Uh, Again, going back to outside of arenas and going to like BGs and that, where you have a more target-rich environment, that would be
right.
reasonable. But
Yeah, it definitely would be. It's good cleave on it. So
yeah, all right. And then conduits. So, or actually, sorry, back to. Is there a specific soulbind that you pull for Venthyr? Let's just
yep.
talk
So for
Venthyr since that's
Venthyr,
yours.
I think is Nadia is how you say it, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. I call it Nadia. Nadia is the one I run probably 100% of the time. I don't really swap to the other ones.
All right.
So yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think I don't think anybody actually really swaps around their soulbinds. I think like,
Right. Even if it's slightly better, they're like, eh.
it's such
They
a
don't
pain in
want
the
to do it.
butt.
It
It's
really is, and conduit energy made it more of a pain in the butt. But they're getting
yeah.
rid of that, so
Yep.
maybe we'll see a bit more variety.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. So then, what conduits are you popping in your soulbind?
Right. So, um, since I'm Venthyr, I really love
Mm-hmm.
the Covenant specific one. It's called Siphon Malice. So basically, that mirrors the Torment ability I was hyping up earlier. Every time it procs, it increases your spell damage by 4%, and that stacks up 3 times. So, before you're going into your burst rotation, you can, which with arcane power, you can get this thing ticking. So not only are you getting clear casting, you're getting increased spell damage. Excuse me, and it's just really, really strong in my opinion to increase the damage you can do because arcane can definitely one-shot people, and this covenant really helps with that, or conduit really helps with that. The
Mm-hmm.
next one that I'd say is really, really strong, and it's probably the best, is called Arcane Prodigy. So basically,
Ah,
each wave of a clear cast arcane missiles reduces the cooldown of arcane power by when its max is about zero point 0.6 seconds, right? So this is back to going why that first row is really good. The amplification talent in your talent row is because it increases when you clear cast, you do another 2 additional missiles. So I think it's a total of 8. So every time you're casting clear casting, you get arcane power back faster and faster.
wow.
And
Yep.
having anytime you can desync CDs in Arena is just
Mm-hmm.
really, really strong. That's why Night Fae was so strong for so long in Arena, just
Yeah.
because you get your cooldowns faster than the enemy team can get their defenses back.
Yep.
Um, so it's just really, really strong in my opinion. And again, I think if they buffed clear casting proc rate, this would be just through the roof strong as well, and just really, really fun. So I run that one baseline.
Okay.
And then how many? We get about 3, right? Yeah. So
Well, it
there's
depends on your
3 that you
soulbind,
can.
right?
That's true. Um, I think. Do they go above 3? Does anyone get to run 4?
uh,
Potency conduits. I,
I
I think. I
don't
can't know for
know.
sure, but
I don't
I
know.
think 3 is the max. But
Yeah.
at least for Nadia, it's 3 is the max, so we can go off
Okay.
of that. So you have a little bit of a
Solid.
choice here. There's
Yep.
called Nether Precision, and then Magi's Brand. So another precision is when you use clear casting, the damage of your next 2 arcane blasts is increased by 10%. This conduit was bugged for all the way up until 9.1, so you can finally use it now, and it's pretty decently strong. It's not like
Mhm.
overpowered or anything, but it does help you a little bit with throughput and your burst rotation. And then the other one is called Magi's Brand,
Mhm.
which is your Touch of the Magi accumulates another, at max it's about 12% or so extra damage.
Okay.
So if you're in a situation where you get to pump a lot of damage in a Touch of the Magi, it can be pretty strong. I value these two about even. Personally, I've been using Nether Precision, um,
Mhm.
but you can definitely run Magi's Brand. I think they're both kind of equally as good. And then the one you just never run is Artifice of the Archmage, which is every time you use Arcane Barrage, you have a pitifully low percent. Like at max, it's like 8% chance to to
Yeah.
grant 2 arcane charges, which is like when you do it in your head, how many times you have to press that button to just get 2 arcane charges anyways. It's just so low
Mhm.
that it's just not worth it. So it's pretty dead
Uh,
conduit.
that sounds yeah. I think actually according to this, I think the max rank is 9.6% on that. So even then, like a 1 in 10 chance, if
Yeah.
ugh, That's
right?
harsh. That's
And
harsh.
and then on top of it, you only get 2 arcane charges. You max out at 4, right? So
Yeah.
it's so little value to play the
Yeah.
slot machine for, you know.
Yeah. Not
So
worth it. What about for your endurance and your finesse? Is there anything
so
there?
let's see for endurance. The strongest one is definitely Tempest Barrier. This is super, super strong, and if they end up nerfing Mage's defensive capabilities, this is probably one they'll end up nerfing. So every time you blink, this is really strong because all mages run Shimmer. You get a shield for a lot of your health bar. It's 8% at max enhanced of your maximum health for 15 seconds. So that's just a heck of a lot of healing every time you blink to
Yep.
get another shield. It's also purge protection because it's something that can be purged off of you.
Yep.
And so every time you do that, you have another thing that they have to purge off of you. Super strong. Definitely something you will be running baseline. The next one I run baseline is Cryo Freeze.
Mhm.
Not all mages run this, but I find a lot of value in it. So when you're in
Yeah.
Ice Block, you heal at max, it's 110% of your maximum health. So basically, you can think about it. It's stronger per second, when you're
Yeah.
in there. Um, and this is just really, really strong because it takes a little uh, pressure off of your healer to heal you when you're in ice block.
Hmm.
And they added a lot of ways for people to break ice block these days. Warrior is so prevalent on the ladder. I think it's like the most played class and spec as well. And
Yeah.
they have shattering throw now, so they just break your ice block almost instantly. So being able to get a little bit of heal on it is just really nice.
Okay.
And then if you can sit in the whole thing, just getting a full heal is just really crazy. So I find my play one running that a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so the last two is diverted energy. So basically, your barriers heal you for uh 50% at max of the damage that it was absorbed. I don't run this all the time. I pretty much run this one if I swap out a potency for an endurance route. If I want to
Okay.
go mega defensive, and part of the reason why is this conduit gets more value if you're playing Triune, which is the defensive legendary where you get all three mage barriers.
Yeah.
And since I don't run that one often, I run the damage one. It's just
Hmm.
not as strong for me, but I definitely swap into that one. And then the last one is condensed Animosphere. It's nerfed in Arena, I think, over 50%, or if not, just
Yeah.
50%. So it's just not very strong. I almost never ever run it. It's just not worth it. So that's one's kind of dead to me. Some specs you see sometimes they run it, but I
Hmm.
think even then it's just not worth it. The amount of healing you get at the end of the game is just really, really low from it.
Yeah. I
Yeah, go
guess.
ahead.
I guess with that one, it kind of depends on your healer too. Like if you're running with a druid, then it's just another hot along with it, right? I- But
Yeah, you
I
get
can
a
see what
little
you're
proc
saying.
from the damage. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It just
Sorry.
ends up being really small over time. Like if you're gonna run full endurance conduits, like you
Hmm.
can run it and you'll get some value from it, but you might as well just run a potency or something instead of that. And yeah, just my
Yeah.
thoughts on it.
Well, and that kind of fits with your class fantasy as well as being like the major damage dealer. Like, why would you
Right.
just amp your damage more and melt somebody?
Yeah.
All right. What about the finesses? Are they? I think we haven't talked about those yet.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of finesse, um, you pretty much can only play two that you would really run. Flow of Time is really good. That's basically it reduces the cooldown of Blink. Um, at max, it reduces it by about 4 seconds, which is really good. You get your polys off more. You can use your blinks defensively. Just having that is really good. I put it on equal value with Grounding Surge, and
Okay.
this is like a preference. I run Flow of Time, but Grounding Surge is really good as well. Is if you land a kick, it reduces the cooldown of your kick by 4.5 seconds. I think it's closer to 5 at max rank. I don't know. So you just get your kick back faster, which is always really good. Those are the two you pretty much run.
Hmm.
This is me going to be on my soapbox here because I even made a forum post about it. So you have this cool ability called Incantation of Swiftness.
Yeah.
So when you use your invisibility, it increases your movement speed. Okay, so this is going to be in me and my soapbox here.
Okay.
Is for Frost and for Fire, when they use their invisibility, they get this ability, and it's like they get 80% speed. I think it's higher than 80%. They are a jackrabbit. They are running extremely fast. It is really fun. For Arcane, it's heavily nerfed. So at max rank, it's like 32% or so. So it's just very slow. It's not anything worth getting excited over.
Mhm.
The only thing in my mind I can think of is why they nerfed this, because I think they nerfed it very early on, is for Arcane, your invisibility is only a 2-minute cooldown.
Right.
So maybe they think that'd be too strong, because for the other specs, I think it's like 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, it is.
So I highly disagree with it. I really think this should be the same level for all the specs. Having Arcane be its invisibility on a lower cooldown and also provides a wall for you, damage reduction. I think is just like unique to Arcane, and there's no reason this one should be nerfed. But since it's nerfed, you never run it ever. If they reverted it to back the way that is for the other specs, this would be so much fun. I'd run it all the time, and I'd have and I don't know. Blizzard just doesn't want me to have fun lately. But
Yep.
and then the last one is Winter's Protection. You never run it. It reduces the cooldown of Ice Block by 45 seconds. Um, the
Yeah.
meta is so fast that it's just rare that you're going to get into your second ice block anyways. The games that go above 5-6 minutes tend to be a bit more rare.
Yeah.
That it's just you might as well have a conduit that is kind of up all the time, or just giving you multiple value like grounding surge, flow time, or something. So I just never run Winter's Protection. It's just not very interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. I don't agree with you about the greater invisibility though. Like seriously, you got a 60% reduction for 3 seconds after you come out of invisibility. Like that's
Yep.
essentially a wall. Like
Yeah,
do you
but you
really
have
need to
to
run
think.
around like a jackrabbit?
Well, when you look at the other benefits the other specs have, so Fire has Cauterize, right? So they have a
Yeah.
cheat death at baseline, and they have Dragon's Breath, which is an 18-second AoE disorient, incredibly
Yeah.
strong. And then Frost has 2 ice blocks. And
True.
then Arcane has our invisibility is a 3-second wall for 60%,
Mm-hmm.
It out of all the three, if I could pick and choose, I probably wouldn't pick the invisibility one.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be too overpowered just to be able to run around pretty fast. But the other thing is people make the point that says, oh, your invisibility is instant, where the other one's castable. But the ability, you get the speed bonus instantaneously before you even get into invisibility. So it's technically an 86% sprint for the other specs
Yeah.
instantly. You don't even have to get into invisibility. So uh, I think
Yeah.
it could be all right. I think people would
And I
not
think
place Arcane as being
I
too
think it,
overpowered if that were the case.
invisibility is an insta cast anyways. So there's no
It's
cast time on it.
instant,
Yeah.
but it takes you 3 seconds to get invisible
Oh
for the other
yes.
spec.
Yeah.
For Arcane, you instantly go invisible.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Fair. Okay. Yeah. Eh. No, I'm still not gonna buy it. All right. Legendaries. So you mentioned yours. That's the Arcane Harmony, right?
Correct.
And then there's the Triune Ward, which is the one we all have heard of since
Yep.
Shadowlands.
Nerfed
That's
five,
the
nerfed like 5 times, and people are probably still gonna use it.
yep. Uh, is there any other legendaries that people should think about,
So
or
this
is
is
it
kind of a preference. There's not too many arcane mages in the world, but the other ones who are really good. There's one guy. His name's Russian Arcane. He's
Mhm.
aptly plays in Russia. He definitely likes the Arcane Bombardment one. So this is like an
okay?
execute legendary.
Ooh,
So it increases when they're below 35% health. It does a lot of damage. It really buffs your Arcane Barrage.
all right.
This one's definitely viable. I personally don't like it in Arena, just because when people are at 35%, it's either you have enough damage to kill them or they're already trading a defensive,
Mm-hmm.
and then you play most of the game without your legendary because they're not below 35%. Um, I think it's really good for rated battlegrounds because people are getting low quite fast and you can throw the damage off much stronger. But in arena, I just technically don't like it. But some mages definitely run it and they think it's good. So you definitely can play that one. I
Okay.
love Arcane Harmony though. I really love it because it doesn't matter what health they're at, and you can throw it with your damage, and then outside of AP, you just have better throughput. You're just able to do more damage. The other
Makes
ones
sense.
aren't very interesting for Arcane, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
was looking at him earlier. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Distant player command is interesting. You see fire mages run this because it's really easy to pull off, and since they crit all the time anyways, they get a lot of value from it. For the people who don't know, if you use a frost, fire, and arcane spell within 10 seconds of each other, the
mhm.
critical strike damage is increased by 20%. So for a mage who's using combust, for example, this is really, really strong. But at baseline, arcane doesn't have a lot of crit, so you
Yeah.
just don't get a lot of value from it. That's the only other one that I can see some people possibly playing.
Hmm. Actually, that was in uh, the 2v2 tournament that they did for Oasis. They had
Oh,
a
I
mage in
bet.
it running that. I
Yeah,
remember.
it's really strong. It's very, very lethal for fire for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he did pretty good. Okay, all right. Uh, I have to admit, I like the feel for a bunch of the legendaries, but it's still like so many of them have some really good ideas, but it kind of sucks we're stuck to only one legendary right now. So it's like everybody just kind of does the same thing. So it's kind of cool that there's some different choices where, like, is it you're doing the harmony, people are doing triune ward, arcane bombardment, but yeah, I really hope they actually let us wear a few more legendaries because there's some really good ones in the different
Yeah.
talents or the different
It
trees.
would be cool to run two like you could in Legion, and I'll be honest, the Legion legendaries were a bit more fun, some of them.
Yeah,
But the way I see it, some of them just would seem incredibly overpowered together if you're able to run two. So I have a feeling
right.
we'll never get there just because of
Yeah.
how they were designed. And I think early on in Legion, they were made with the idea you'd get to run more than one, but
Hmm.
I just don't see that happening in Shadowlands. It'd be cool,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh, here's a question just off the side. Do you think that this time legendaries are going to cross patches, or do you think they're going to become inert at the end of Shadowlands like they've done before?
As in, after this expansion, you'll still be able to use these legendaries in future
Yeah.
content?
Yeah.
No. I uh
No, that's too bad.
I think they're in their own Blizzard's trying to figure out how to do something other than gear to keep with your character. And then
Hmm.
obviously this became this borrowed powered system, but they kind of have to
Yeah.
get rid of it so people who didn't play that expansion still get it. And I don't think the community knows either what they want from that. Because you definitely want
Yeah.
something that sticks with your character that isn't just transmog, that increases your power. Because
Yep.
nothing sucks more than grinding out all of this, all of Korthia, all of whatever, just to have it be meaningless within a patch or two. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Or not even you get 3 levels and all of a sudden you've outgrown all that power you spent time collecting.
yeah, it's a really good question of how they do that and how they would implement that. So, I
Yeah.
think someday they'll have that answer, but
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
All right. Speaking of gear, stats. What's the stat weighting? Wait.
So, pretty much haste versa is pretty much baseline what you want to run.
Okay.
Um, if you want to have some fun, you can start playing a bit more critical strike
Yep.
because the way the spec is designed, or the way I play it, you get really big arcane barrages. And if they crit, or your Arcanosphere crits, like it pretty much kills them. Like they're dead.
Hmm.
So the more you get to increase that chance and add a bit more crit, it's pretty fun. But then again, you're just playing a bit more on the RNG side.
Yeah.
So I pretty much rank mastery and crit about the same. They
Okay.
both can benefit you. If you don't want to play the RNG so much, you just play a bit more mastery if you can. But just basically haste versa. You can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, versus the all around stat, and you. Why would you not want to just cast stuff faster, right?
Right, yeah. Landing polys is just like that's how you win the game, and haste helps that. So, and then
Yeah.
versatility is just, it's the PvP spec or the
Hmm.
PvP stat weight to reduce your damage, increase your damage by X%. So,
So I have to ask the stupid question because, well, stupid for me. What does mastery even do for mages or for arcane mages? Then does it
so
help?
it's pretty interesting. They've changed it so many times that it just to me it seems bloated right now. So it increases your maximum mana regen rate and your
Okay.
maximum mana. So that's good to have a baseline because
Yeah.
you cast a lot of mana. And then your arcane charges, which stack up to 4, increase the damage of arcane blast by so much percent, and then increase your arcane barrage by so much percent. So that's
Okay.
good. And then they just added this in the last expansion, I think. Increase all other arcane damage by X percent. So it's like for stuff that has charges, it does a little bit more damage than if you just had just versatility, for example. But then the increase all their arcane damage is a little bit less per point, if that makes sense. So if I
Yeah.
had like 13% mastery or whatever, it increases all their arcane damage by almost 11%. So it's not quite like a 1-to-1 sort of scenario. So it's all
Okay.
right. It's just not the most exciting in the world. It's just, flat damage increase on stuff that versatility pretty much does the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay, that makes sense. Because listening to how I was like, what would it be like to have a mastery, like just a crap ton of mastery and do a mastery build for an Arcane Mage? But then it's like, that pretty much sounds like what versatility does. So
yeah,
eh?
it'll end up being about the same damage bonus,
Yeah.
slightly more to Arcane Blast and Barrage, slightly more damage there.
Okay.
And then of course you get the mana regen rate and everything else, but then you're just giving up all that defensive capability from versatility, which is just for how high damage is right now. It's such a hard trade-off.
Yeah. Yikes. So for PvP gear, is it all Versa Mastery or like Versa Haste Mastery and Versa Mastery
Yeah, for
Crit?
the most part, every piece you can get should have haste versa on it.
Okay.
There's only I think like 2 pieces that don't. There's one ring that you can get that only one ring is haste versa, and then the other ring is like crit versa or
Mhm.
like mastery versa. You can't get double haste versa rings from PvP at least. And then the boots, you can't get haste versa boots.
What?
In PvP, which is really odd to me. And as a fun fact for cloth wearers at least, um, there's only 2 ways this patch only to finally get haste versa boots, and it's either you do one of the mythic bosses to get 252, or you do that new dungeon that came out, Trazavesh. I'm probably saying it wrong. I actually
Yeah.
haven't done it yet. That one they finally drop haste versa boots, but since it's not on the mythic plus rotation, you can't get a high item level of it. So personally, I just run versa mastery boots from PvP, and then I got lucky enough to get a haste versa 252 ring from my vault. And since your ring doesn't have a main stat on it, like intellect, it's really easy to use just a ring for your haste versa.
Okay.
And a lot of people just use the crafted ring. You can get
Yeah.
a crafted ring from the auction house that's like 230 or something. So people use that over the PvP ring that they can get from the vendor.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I think it kind of falls in line with their design intent was you could get like 80% of what you needed from the PvP vendor, but you'd still have to go out and find some other places to really min max if you wanted to, right? So,
Right. There's a couple slots you can do.
yeah.
Um, this is just me again on my soapbox, but they wanted to lower the effectiveness of PvP gear outside of PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Because season 1 we had the greatest participation in history for PvP
Yeah.
because every PvEer is like, I need to get in there to get that gear to be competitive, because it was so strong. So
Mm-hmm.
they nerfed it basically outside of arena, and in arena they made it stronger. So it did help them. Lots of less PvEers are doing it, but now it's like you're basically having a stat weight, right? Like you're basically forced to wear the PvP gear to do the best, and those
Yeah.
comes with certain stats. Whereas like in season 1, it was like, man, I wanted to try like a really high crit build or something, Like I could go out in Mythic Plus, I could go out and raid to make that cool PvP set, but you just can't really do that anymore because of how arena gear scales and stuff. You're
Yeah.
you're basically having templates without templates.
Yeah. Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sorry. Um, you just kind of like, I just want to give a quick shout out. Seckle, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for all the gifted tier subs. Uh, and I realized that I had actually let my technically PvP subscription lapse. So thank you for giving me a subscription.
Cycle's a good guy. Cycle hangs out on my stream sometimes. He's very
that's
generous.
that's really
Very good guy.
awesome.
He also streams himself. He plays Outlaw Rogue, and we need more of those. So
What? He plays Outlaw Rogue?
he plays Outlaw Rogue. It's amazing. I
Wow.
love it.
That's like finding a unicorn.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the same thing about me. We're Arcane Outlaw. We're the unicorns in the game.
Oh my gosh. The other team must not know what to do when they actually see what your specs are, and they're like,
It's true. There's some surprise value to it for sure in beating people.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay. Just back to stats. Is there any soft caps or any hard caps? Like, are you only doing like 30% versatility, or is it just like, who cares about diminishing returns? Just max it out. Same with the haste.
Yeah. So I'm not really aware of any soft caps that you really need. You pretty much just keep doing haste versa continually.
Okay.
I know in this patch people were thinking about it because secondary stats always go up as the expansion goes on. That that we might be paying a bit more attention to the diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But it still seems like it's not the biggest progressive tax yet. And even if it does, versatility is just so strong because
Right.
that's usually the one that you get up higher that you just still do it anyways. So, yeah, I personally like I didn't put versatility on my legendary, even though I could have, just because I thought the diminishing return would be a bit more punishing for versatility. But even
Mhm.
then, it just doesn't matter. So just haste versa,
Okay.
and you can't go wrong.
All right. Uh, okay. So, we have all our talents. We have our gear. We've done our rotations and everything. We've gone and hit some other guides. Hit your channel, asked you how to arcane barrage and when to do things. Now I want to pick some teammates. What should I start looking for outlaw rogues?
I actually think Arcane Outlaw could be pretty fun to play and pretty decent.
Okay.
Personally, I play Arcane Windwalker Ardrid. I think the comp is incredibly strong right now. It's very versatile,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm having a lot of success with it. And getting near the top of the ladder with it. It's so strong because one, Windwalker is really, really strong, and I
Yeah.
think it synergizes well with Arcane as well. Just
Really.
because everyone's very mobile,
Mm-hmm.
everyone can do steady damage, and then you have just the other benefits Arcane could bring, like purges, etc., etc. So if you're gonna play Arcane, that's probably the best comp you can do.
Okay.
But Arcane matches like decently well with like Sin Rogue or Outlaw Rogue. It doesn't very much work with Sub Rogue in the same vein that Fire Mage does.
Mm.
Um, I think you can play Arcane Warrior pretty well. You can play Arcane Shadow Priest R Druid, which is, people call God Comp,
Yeah.
basically from its old MOP days, I think is where the name was coined. I forget. So that works pretty well. That's probably about it off the top of my head. Arcane Feral works pretty well together as well.
Okay.
Um, that's probably about it. In terms of healers, you're pretty much always running with an Druid. It's always the best, in my opinion. But you can
Huh.
definitely run with a priest as well. You almost never will play with a Mistweaver or our Shaman. They just don't
Yeah.
synergize super well with Mage in general, no matter what spec you play. And you can play with Paladin, but Paladin right now I think is just kind of an average healer. It's not the strongest, it's not the weakest, so you can get by with it, but you would much rather be playing with an Druid or a priest.
Makes sense. Yeah. Resto Druid is so strong right now.
Yeah, it's very strong. It's
Huh.
a lot of people play it too. So they're going
Okay.
to get stronger too in 915 because they're changing one of their
Yes.
PvP talents that when they press Tranquility, not only can you not kick the Tranquility, you're immune to everything.
Yeah.
It's basically like pressing bubble.
I
So
saw the uh the PvP community start to spin up about that. I was like, oh no, is that real? I had
right,
to like look it up. I thought somebody was just memeing, like, how like somebody, they make the fun or the fake notes. It was like, nope, that's real. Okay, all right, let's have some fun. Uh,
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see because I play with a lot of Ardrids, and the fact that most of them are Necrolord as well, which has a
mhm.
similar sort of interaction. Whereas you cast Fleshcraft, you can't be CC'd.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of them are night elves as well. So now you can night elf a CC, you can fleshcraft a
Fleshcraft. Yeah.
CC, and then now you can also tranquility a CC. And they, druids themselves can not be polymorphed and stuff if they're using their forms correctly. So
Exactly.
it's gonna anger some people, I think.
Yeah. Oh well. How do I kill you? Oh wait, no, sure. First, how do you win?
How do you win?
Yeah. What are you
Just
doing as an arcane mage to win?
So basically, you're doing your basic mage setup, which is putting a poly on the healer, and then coordinating damage on your kill target. And the best thing is to go in. You're going into arcane power with full harmony stacks from your legendary, full arcane charges, and you're doing AP barrage basically. And that barrage will hit really hard, and then you go into your normal rotation and just press all your buttons after that. That's probably the general idea.
Okay.
If you can do Arcanosphere into AP Barrage too, that'll do a lot of damage as well. And on your take about how do you kill me, I think it's the basic. Just kick me, get me in an arcane lockout, and you're kind of that potato again for a little bit. It's
Yeah.
like I can't use my defensives. Like you can use ice block, I suppose, but you can't blink away. You can't cast polymorph. You can't use that greater invisibility. You can't use alter time.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of a sitting duck. So it's almost better than a stun.
Wow. So even if you happen to survive that one time, the next go you're hooped.
Yep, you're hooped. So
Yikes.
definitely that's part of the skill set of Arcane is just avoiding kicks as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You must be really good at kiting people then, like seeing when they're coming for you and then just kiting it so that you can continue
Yeah,
casting.
especially as an arcane mage when you don't play with Triune. I call it playing back row, but
Mm-hmm.
you're always kind of kiting away, especially against double Maveway, for example. You're kiting the DPS away from their healer. So if they want to push in on you, they're basically either line of sighting or ranging their healer and then forcing their healer to leave a pillar. So it
Yeah.
makes it easier for you to get your poly if you do push in for it, or it just makes your goes a bit more lethal. So the more you can play quote unquote back row as an arcane mage, the better you're going to do. And the more
Okay.
you kind of figure out how to kite with that in mind, you'll do pretty well.
Wow. I love it. Thanks, Numbing.
Yeah.
I feel enlightened.
There you go, dude.
Really.
Especially if you take the talent.
I don't know. There's the overpowered one seems to. I'm still tickled about that one. So this is a question I love asking because the answers can be so varied. So it's the one thing you would change question. So imagine Ian Hazakostas calls you up, yo Numbing. We really loved you on the Technically PvP podcast. We just wanted to know, we loved your ideas, but unfortunately we can only do one thing. Don't worry about the possibility, the cost, the time, whatever. You name it, we'll make it happen. So
Man, I really thought about this, and I don't want to say there's two, but it's more like what's realistic and what's unrealistic. So, like
you
unrealistic, that probably
no, you can only have one.
Okay, if I had to put it down to one thing, they need to add back the ability called displacement. So it was an ability that Arcane had in BFA and Legion. For those that don't know, is every time you use Blink, you're able to press another ability called displacement that brings you back to the area you blinked from. And when you do that, it restores one of the charges on your blink. So in essence, it would be like if you had your 2 charges of shimmer, if you had displacement, you technically have 4 blinks.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was really fun for mobility, to get your polys and things.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I think they removed it is every melee went to the forums and really complained about the mobility of Arcane, and then Blizzard responds by saying, "All right, we're going to gut that mobility," and then they turned every melee in World of Warcraft to have God mobility.
Yeah.
Like I swear, a Fury Warrior has the most mobility I've ever seen from
It's up
from a
there.
melee in this game.
Yeah.
And every other melee as well has pretty crazy mobility. So I think honestly they could add displacement back, and it wouldn't cause too much of an issue for
Okay.
for the amount of mobility other classes have these days.
I love it. I just have to challenge one question.
Yeah.
Is if you're going to have displacement with that many shimmers and blinks, is blink still going to get you out of CC?
I mean, it should, because if you run Shimmer, you only have one charge of Blink, right? And you can't do it while casting. So I feel like it's a decent trade-off. It's pretty hard to get
Fair.
CC when you can't use Shimmer these days.
Yeah.
So
No, that's fair. All right. Okay. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna say, so I've been on a kick here, about graphical representation of power. It's definitely something. It's been a string that I've been going on, and I think it is something that I would love to start seeing. Is so like, case in point for an Arcane Mage. If an Arcane Mage has, their 5 charges of Arcane, or like they're they maximize, they kind of start like glowing with power. So so have them have like an internal blue glow that just kind of gets brighter as they, maybe not like obscenely glowing, or like they're the beacon, and then it everybody's like, oh, he's gonna blow up, not like that, but kind of like, you ever watch the Warcraft movie?
I have, yeah. It's been a while though.
Yeah, so when he goes to Dalaran and the Kirin Tor are there, and they're kind of like actually glowing with power, kind of thing.
Oh, right.
Like that kind of idea.
Okay.
I think Arcane Mages should have that.
I agree, dude. They should, like, I always say, people, when they read the specs you can change into, for example, the way to describe Arcane is always great. Manipulate raw arcane magic, destroying enemies with overwhelming power. Like, it's just so good. And I feel like when you're at maximum power, you should be just like unable to control it almost. You're overflowing with it. It really fits it to me.
Right. Ooh, have you ever watched the TV show Magicians?
I haven't.
Okay.
Is it good?
Right. Yeah. There is second season, first season. The female magician, she lets herself go into the power, and she kills herself, and becomes like raw energy. I think they call him a Nifim or something like that.
Okay.
But it kind of makes me think of that as like, like the blue glow.
The same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wait, but it's that thing, like, if you hold back a little bit, you still have the power. You just don't give yourself into the power. So it's kind of like they said, that it's that cusp of like walking that thin line of overwhelming power to destroy enemies, or like destroy yourself.
Right. And that's why, like, it's really, in Legion, for example, if you had the artifact weapon, the weapon would talk to you, and it would tell you about getting more power and stuff like that. And it really fit the class fantasy really well. So I agree with that.
That's awesome. Oh, I miss those. Okay.
I do too.
Just one quick, in BFA, did you turn in the dagger, or did you keep it to keep talking to yourself?
Oh man, I had to remember. I think I turned it in.
Did you? Okay.
I don't remember though.
I kept it. I still have it on. Yeah. If I ever go to into the BFA, it starts talking to me again. I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. Shoot. Okay. All right. I'm having a great time talking to you, but this is getting late.
Same.
We should really push into the next part here. We'll talk about the news, and then we'll roll this out.
All right.
All right. Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
Yes, Millhouse. Who opened up the extra large can of whoop ass? Well, the answer is going to be Captain Murphy and Kira, the Scream team. So they were the team that won the Oasis Community 2v2 tournament back on the 22nd of October. So huge congrats to them. This was a fun tournament. It was one evening only, solo queue, 2v2, DPS only, just, completely off wall. And so Captain Murphy and Kyra, they were teamed together, and literally they had to like figure it out on the first couple matches, and they were able to make it all the way to the very end. So huge congrats to them. Hot fixes. As always, we always have hot fixes from the Blizzard team as they fix stuff. I'll be honest, I didn't really see anything that jumped out at me that was hugely PvP related in the last little bit. I'll be honest, I kind of glazed over it, so I didn't do a great in-depth look at it, but looking again, I still don't see any major PvP stuff. So it seems like they've held it all for the 9.15 patch notes, which also have been updated regularly, and it's really interesting. I don't know if you noticed this, Numbing, but they'd made the news or where it got announced that the PTR became a release candidate,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, like a whole bunch, they're like, "What? There's like no tuning. There's like hardly any classes." And all of a sudden, like
Yeah.
this last week, it's just been a whole bunch of class tuning. It's been awesome.
Yeah. I don't think it's gone far enough yet. I will
No?
say this is one of the only times where I feel like people in the rating community, the Mythic Plus community, and the PvP community all think that there's not enough changes yet in terms of balancing.
Mhm.
I don't know if they just are trying to wait till 9.2 to do, really turn the dial a bit more. But it's pretty prevalent, especially if you follow like players on Twitter.
Yeah.
People don't think enough has happened yet. There is definitely some good changes in PvP. Don't get me wrong; they've done a couple
Mhm.
here and there, but it doesn't seem like there's enough that the meta will change at all. That you'll see
Yeah.
classes that haven't been being played start getting played, and then the classes that are overwhelming me be played, tuned down a little bit. I don't think we're seeing those sort of swings, and um, I think you kind of need those in PvP to keep it kind
Yeah.
of interesting. So I
Yeah.
think they could do a bit more. I wouldn't be mad if they buffed Arcane a little bit, but they buffed Frost, I think, which was good. They
Yeah.
buffed it, I think, for PvE reasons. It wasn't a PvP specific, but they definitely need the buff in PvP as well. So it'll help them out a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit more for PvP as well, because I actually remember when Venruki was talking with Holinka and they were talking about it, the lack of steady, consistent damage was
Yeah,
an issue, and I thought that's kind of what that was about. Same with the Fury Warrior, where it increased the amount of damage at auto attacks, which sounds a bit. I mean, it's PVE as well, but it sounds a bit more PvP, just to
yeah.
give you a bit more,
So
so you're not just set up on the one CD
yeah.
and then done.
Just like briefly on that, the interview with Halinka, they have a lot of strange PvP modifiers on a lot of spells, and it's very
Yeah.
hard to know. Like there isn't like Venruki asked at the time if there could be a website or something where they
Yeah.
mention all of these because it's not very clear in the game. So they reverted some of the Frost ones a while ago.
Mhm.
These most recent ones, I think they're both because both specs Fury and Frost could be doing better in both PvE and PvP. But I think primarily what made those ones changed is, if you go to Warcraft logs and pull off the statistics, you can
Mhm.
pretty much tell which specs are going to get buffed and which ones weren't. And in single target scenarios, Frost just wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So they definitely pulled them up a little bit from that. And then the same thing goes with Fury because it's obviously dwarfed by arms in both aspects of the game.
Yep.
So um,
Big
I
time.
feel I still think they need to go a bit further with both
Mhm.
of those specs because fire is clearly the king in PvP, and so is arms and whatnot. So, but
Well,
one can hope.
yeah, there's such a strong S tier that it's
Yeah,
yeah. Just on that, so Lika, who is the creator behind the Drustvar.com website,
yeah.
he was listening to that and immediately turned around and grabbed. I think he went to the Sims and found all the PvP modifiers for SimC and pulled
Okay.
that into his website. So if you go over to Drustvar.com, he actually has a page set up that shows all the modifiers for PvP
Oh,
based
interesting. I
off
was
of
wondering
SimC.
if there was a website for that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's that. I guess back to, so aside from those, another announcement that got it was updated last night. I don't see it because it looks like it was out of data mining. It's not actually in the patch notes. Beast Mastery, or BM Hunters, they got a slight nerf. At first, I thought it was a lot bigger than it was. During Bestial Wrath, it looked like it was a 20% reduction of Bestial Wrath, but it's a 20% reduction in PvP on the abilities when Bestial Wrath is active. So Bestial Wrath will still hit like a truck. It's just all the abilities that the hunter is casting while Bestial Wrath is active that got a 20% reduction. So,
Yeah. I think
which
that's
is
fair. I think people are going to be happy about it. People are really upset when BM is the top hunter spec.
yeah. Well, and somebody was saying like it's like a 3 button rotation.
Yeah,
It's
it's really simple to pull off, I think is the
yeah.
other thing about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, there's not a lot of thought to it. So let's hear. So other than that, I think we've all known 915. So you got your new rank to the PvP gear. So with that, there's going to be a slight modification to the honor costing for the ranking. So I haven't really, I have to admit, I haven't had a chance to really go on and test what the cost is for each. I believe it's yeah. So sorry, it's right here. Honor cost to upgrade unready gear was reduced by 25%. So I think overall it should be cheaper. So I know a lot of people are asking for honor gains to be increased, and while I think that would help, it's not going to be quite as costly to uprank your gear as it was in 9.1. Thank goodness. I think that's about it. And then yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of other little tweaks and things here, like holy looks like holy healing got holy priest healing got buffed slightly. Meanwhile, some other things got
bit
a
more
little
than
bit
slight, in
reduced.
my opinion, but priests will be much better. They'll be pretty
Holy
strong.
priest, yeah. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if holy priest pull ahead of disc.
Yeah. I forget the changes though. Did they buff disc as well, or was it just H priest? Actually, I think it was just H priest.
It was just holy, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So is their heal is increased by 15% in PvP to what it was. Flash heal is increased by 15%, and renew healing is increased by 15% in PvP combat. So
Right. My only take, just briefly on the honor change, is they really need to up the cap, the amount of honor you can hold at one time. It's painfully low right now, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. That when they finally hit that rating barrier, they finally get above it, they can only upgrade 1 or 2 pieces, and then the rest of their time is going to be just straight to the battlegrounds and playing over and over again. The honor cap, I think in like TBC or something is relatively higher. I mean, just not looking at just the number, but like what you can do with that honor is much higher.
Yeah.
And they need to just up it, I think, in 915. I think even if they just doubled it to 30k instead of 15, I think people would be much, much happier. Because technically right now, you don't even have enough with 15k to upgrade your weapon to max if you get to that rating threshold. So that's something I think would be the biggest change besides just changing honor requirements, but just wanted to plug it in there.
Yeah. No, I can't disagree. One item that I wanted to talk about with the 915 is not in the PTR yet. It's not in the update notes, but there is the bind on account unchained equipment chest. So this is apparently
Right.
It's supposed to be purchasable with conquest points, and it should allow you to buy a chest and then send it to one of your alts to open, and it'll create a random 220 piece in accordance with your spec, your loot spec. So I logged in. I even logged in today after they brought the servers back up and everything, and it still isn't on the vendor. But somebody said that they saw something about 375 conquests for this thing, which seemed a little low.
Well, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad price for sure. I mean, the only downside is always this RNG, because maybe you get a piece that you have already had, etc., or not the slot
true.
you want and stuff. But I think it's really in the right direction, making your alts more playable and stuff. So I'm happy to see it. I don't think it should go much higher than 375, but yeah, just because you've already earned it on your main, you've probably already bought stuff on your main, and you don't have that much conquest left. And if you've already got that far into the season, I think having a slight discount on conquest to buy gear for an alt isn't breaking the game. I think it's good for it. So because you don't have that much conquest. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I guess the thing is, I was thinking, you could farm conquest on your main to then send it. But yeah, I guess at 375, that's a lot of games.
Yeah, and you only get 550 a week. So in essence, you get maybe 1.5 kind of those that you could send to an alt a week, which is just kind of one extra piece that you still have to play the RNG slot machine with. So
yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Okay. Let's do last but not least pieces. So we already mentioned before the D Machine. He had left Blizzard. Just Monday, he announced that he got himself a new job. He's working over at Esports Engine, working on their esports team there. So congratulations to David for finding himself a new job. And honestly, I'm not surprised that he ended up going over to the Esports Engine. I think it took about 20 minutes before Mr. Adam messaged him telling him to give him a call. So let's hear. Chris Kaliki, the former WoW dev, he's a former member on the show, just announced that he, as well as with a number of Blizzard alumni, have formed Notorious Studios, and they're going to be working on an RPG with heavy combat systems in that. So really interested to see where he goes, just because I really like his ideas, how he looks at combat and the combat systems, and just the amount of work that he did in WoW, on the monk class, updating the Shadow Priest class, and just doing all that work. So really interested to see what he does there. And last but not least, BlizzCon has been canceled, which we alluded to earlier because of the Need Greed Pass. I don't know. It's we actually had a conversation about this in the Technique PvP Discord channel. Just like, what does that mean? Like, does that make sense that they would cancel it again? Because it was supposed to be online again with some small events, or that's what they're looking at. I don't know. What do you think? Are you disappointed?
I know you're kind of asking the stream too, but just short term, hopefully it's not the case, but I think it might just show that they're a little behind on 9.2 and then the subsequent expansion as well. So it could be just from lack of content to be able to produce. I don't know what actually is going to happen in February because I think that was the time. So but I know some people want to say, oh, because of the external things happening at Blizzard in terms of employees and lawsuits, whatever, without getting into it, they think that could be an issue as well. But I don't think that's the problem. I think, it's a combination of COVID and then just content. But who knows?
I actually I even said this in the Discord, is I feel it's more about the outward facing. Like, sure, the lawsuit was kind of a catalyst, but some of the animosity in the community, and then subsequently, like, there's been a ton of support and a ton of love, but there's also been a lot of like some really horrible stuff that's been passing around on Twitter as well, and in social media, and not just Twitter, but like Reddits and other places. It's just like, if I was in the community and working, and then so you have the toxicity inside the community, inside your organization, and then the toxicity outside from the community. Even if there's some nice people out there, all it takes is those few little taints to just be like, meh. Right. Why would I want to?
Right.
So I honestly hope. So while it sucks, again, and I said that the online stuff just didn't feel the same. I hope that by taking another break and revisiting and redesigning it and reimaging it, that it's going to come out better than it has been before. Does that make sense?
Yep, I agree. I think the best days of Blizzard are ahead. I'll be honest. I think WoW will never die, to be honest, and I think good things will be there to come, but who knows?
Yeah, hope so. I hope so. And
I'm an optimist.
I am too. I want to stay optimistic. So I'm not going to read Morty's piece there in chat. But hey, if you're listening right now, come check out the time marker, and you can at this point, and you can see what he said in chat. All right. On that, now I just shouted out chat. I'm going to give you a chance there, Numbing. Do you have any shout outs? Anybody you want to shout out? Some listeners, a teammate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, besides my own stream, which is Numbing with 2 N's at this front, I play with this druid named Flop Drew. Flop Druid, basically. He's probably one of the best druids in the West. I think he's incredibly good, and I think he puts on a very good face for the game. He's well spoken, he's polite, and I think he's a optimistic about games. Like it can be tough when you lose a game to an overpowered class, but he has a really growth mindset and an attitude that what could I have done better despite that, and I think having those sort of players in the community is really good. I also want to shout out my friend Interverse. He's the Windwalker I've been playing with for so many years. He's starting to stream a little bit as well. I think you might see him around. And then just for the heck of it, they asked me to do it. The guild I've been with for many years now is called Sanctimonious. I don't really raid with them due to time constraints, but they're in the middle of a mythic sanctum. They're looking for healers. If you're a healer and you want to play on Tuesday, Thursday nights, I'm sure you can get in touch with them and they'd love to have you.
All right. Do they have the website or anything like that?
I think they do.
Okay.
You can always get in touch with some of the. I'm sure they're advertising on Sargeras forums. That's the server they're on.
Okay.
And they're probably mad at me of how I'm not plugging their channels correctly here. But they're
No
great
worries.
people. They're a great family to be with, and being in a nice guild in WoW is probably one of the best experiences you can have in this game, and I still hold by it. So
It is.
if
It
you're looking
is.
for a home, that's the place to be.
Nice. All right. So Alliance Sargeras. Got it. Okay. Well, I think other than the Twitch channel, is there anywhere else people can find you?
At the moment, that's about it. I'm trying to move into YouTube, make some guides at some point when time permits, and then maybe open up a Twitter. But at the moment, it's just a Twitch for now.
All right. Oh, and the forums because Soapbox.
And the forums, yeah, you'll find me there.
Awesome.
Preaching.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, if anybody wants to find us, you can always contact us directly with a tweet at technically_PvP. We have an email over at technicallypvp@gmail.com. Or again, you can join the Warcraft Radio Discord where we have our own show channel there, along with actually channels for all the other shows under Warcraft Radio. Also, if you want, you can visit the Warcraft Radio website where you'll find a podcast directory with us and many other great shows at warcraftradio.com. And hey, that directory also has a review system, so head on over there and tell everybody what you think of your favorite shows. Hint, hint, give us 5 stars. All right. You will all have lovely, lovely evenings. And after we put this up, you can go and find the show notes and find all the links for everything that we've talked about there. In the meantime, have a great night, all you lovely people, and we'll chat with you next time. And I click this, and I click.
All right.